Hello and happy Friday. Welcome to Happy Hour Live with my dear friend and fellow speaker, author, and phenomenal human, Simon T. Bailey. Hello, Simon. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, and so good to be with you.
It is so good to be with you. And I mean, I can just tell you so much about Simon. Basically, Simon was a Disney executive and is just an incredible person, and decided at one point that he really just wanted to create the life and business that he had always dreamed of. He is the leader of the Spark movement, and its purpose is to ignite sustainable transformation in people and organizations and teams. He has books, he has webinars. I mean, this man has over 87 million views on his Goalcast video, which I just love all of them. So I'm so thrilled to have you here today. How are you, my friend?
Great. So good to be with you.
So tell me what's been going on with you in quarantine, because I know as
Oh my
a
goodness.
speaker, as a business owner, it definitely threw us for a loop. I know right at the beginning, I was terrified, like almost petrified. And then you go into, well, I can either stay petrified and scared and in victimhood, or I can pivot and figure it out. And so, with the help of an incredible team and my husband, we were able to pivot. What have you been doing?
Same thing. I think initially I just had hunkered down and I was doing a lot of grazing, ate too much, put on a few more pounds, and I
COVID pictures.
depression or what it was. And then I said, wait a minute, I've got two kids in college. I have bills to pay. We need to snap out of it.
That's right. I
Yeah,
was
same thing. Reached out to friends and started doing a lot of virtual work, free initially, just to kind of get a toe in the water, and then
Yeah.
just kind of dive in. So we're treading now. It's been great though. It's been really good.
So I know we speak for some of the same conferences and the same groups, and I know you did a lot of work for leaders and teams. Like, what are you seeing are the trends? When I first started doing, I was pretty blessed because about 9 years ago, one of our corporate clients hired me to start teaching virtually, and I didn't
Right.
know what I was doing, and so they schooled me. Basically, they taught me how to do it. And last year, we redid my office just to be kind of a makeshift studio, which turned out to be good timing. And I've talked with a lot of leaders and teams, and at first it was kind of novel, and everybody was feeling just stunned almost. And then it turned into, we're connected constantly. We're working harder than we've ever worked, and now we don't shut off at all. And now it's like burnout and exhaustion and anxiety and stress. What are you seeing with your clients and the people that you're working with?
Yeah, I think the organizations that really get it understand that connectedness is the new currency. So in time past, they've communicated, but now they're looking to really connect human to human, even in this remote virtual world. I think the second observation that I've seen is that individuals have had to dig deep and realize that they can be productive in the midst of, VUCA, the whole volatility,
Yeah.
complexity, ambiguity, right? And people are adapting on the fly. And I think the third observation that I've seen with companies that really get it, they are looking at their customer through a fresh lens, but not just the external customer that pays the bills, but they're looking at their internal customers, their employees, and seeing them through a fresh perspective, and really saying, how do we become a purpose driven company that focuses on purpose first, then profit? And in other words, just really thinking about, are we doing good in the world?
Yeah. That's interesting. I've been seeing that too. I just had a call today with one of our new clients. I'm doing a keynote in English that's going to be translated into Spanish for IBM in Mexico, and they were talking about that. You know, one of the things that it's hard to be innovative and creative when you're exhausted and anxious and uncertain. And we both talk about really maximizing your performance. What have you done to really step up your game, and how does that transferable? Like, what are you seeing as working to really get people's mind in the right place?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I realized, Anne, is that before I could teach it, I had to live it. So I mentioned a few moments ago that I was putting on pounds, eating more. So I stopped, did some pushbacks, and I started getting up earlier. So I'm up between 4 and 5 a.m. I'm out the door walking by 5:15 a.m. at least for 45 minutes. I've got a Fitbit. I've never been a Fitbit fan. I am now hooked. I go to my app. How many steps did I get in? Right? Like totally dialed in, right? So
Yeah, I've got my rings already met today. There we go.
Look at that. So what I recognize now, I'm in a good mental space and I can begin to teach because I exercise, I diet, I sleep. And I said, wait a minute. What I recognize with high performers who have now have to discover what I call fortitude. Fortitude is the new attitude. And fortitude is courage in the midst of adversity. So it's understanding, how do I take my meds? And meds is meditate, exercise, diet, sleep. Because when you take your meds, then you develop that fortitude, which is courage through adversity, to be innovative, to come up with solutions, to push the envelope, not just get stuck in the status quo.
Yeah, and I work with a lot of leaders from first line supervisor to C-suite, and it's interesting to hear, a lot of the senior leaders that I talk to are like, look, we get it. Our staff is under stress. We want them to take care of themselves. We want them to know we support them. And then you talk to the staff and they're like, I'm scared my manager won't understand. I don't want to let him down. I don't want to I'm embarrassed that my kids are tugging on me and the dog is barking in the middle of my 8th Zoom meeting for the day. Do you find that disconnect as well?
Totally. Yeah. And one of the things I've been coaching executives to really think about, and even middle management and frontline leaders, is empathy with authenticity. So the empathy is, I understand, many may have Zoom fatigue, right? But then the authenticity is, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have a business to run, and there are lives that are at stake, literally, bodies,
Right.
people who have been furloughed coming back to work. And yes, we have our strategy that we've set in place, our objectives, our key performance indicators. And so we have to be authentic about, here's the business of business, but we want to empathize simultaneously. And the leaders that can do both invite men and women to feel, number one, safe. Number two, they trust their leader. And then number three, they realize that the leader is transferring psychological ownership to them to say, okay, let me own what I do and do it plus plus.
Yeah, I think that's so, and they have to walk the talk though. They have to focus on self-care. They have to take time to take their meds. And I always joke, I'm on everything but roller skates. So I've got the meditation and the exercise and the diet and the sleep and the meds and the meds. And sometimes it takes all of the above just to function effectively.
It does.
Talk to me personally, because I know that both of us have our own stories of resilience, of trial, of tribulation. I was watching one of your videos as I was preparing for this, and you have such a powerful way of speaking and connecting with people. It's persuasive, it's engaging. I love it. And you said something that just really resonated with me, because I have found myself here before. So I just want to repeat it, and then I'd love for you to just, if you're willing, tell me a little bit more about what it means and how you learned it and what you do differently. So you were talking about the fact that you recently went through a divorce, and I have done that, and it is certainly not fun, especially when you have kids. And it teaches you a lot about yourself, some things you didn't know that you didn't want to know, and things that you like about yourself that you didn't know. But you said, I had the house, but I lost the home. I had success, but I had no significance. I had power, but I had no purpose. I had money, but I had no meaning. And that was so profound and powerful for me. Tell me about your journey.
Yeah, my journey after 25 years of being married, in the words of Dr. Stephen Covey, I was climbing the ladder of perceived success to discover that my ladder was against the wrong wall. And quite frankly, Anne, I had my priorities out of whack. I was not the dad, I was the business guy who happened to be a husband and a dad. And my then wife said to me, "You give everybody the best of you, but you give us the rest of you, and I don't want the leftovers anymore." And so that it helped me really realize that I was chasing things that really didn't matter. And after going to therapy for some 3.5 years, Anita, my therapist, who has more degrees than a thermostat, she said to me, whatever you don't deal with will eventually deal with you. So what I recognized is I had developed some habits that you talk about, some behaviors that were really not serving me, and she invited me to do the deeper work. And what I recognize, and this is what I share with leaders all over the world, is that if your home is jacked up, you will never be an effective leader. You may be effective to a point and you'll get the bottom line impact and you'll have the margins and everybody will celebrate you. But if your home is going to hell in a handbasket, what do you have, right? And what I recognize is that Daniel, who's 21, my oldest, he is going to learn how to love a family based on what he has seen in me. Madison, my 18-year-old daughter, she's going to learn what family looks like and how she should be treated by a spouse based on how I've showed up. And I said, wait a minute, my number one priority is to be a better dad first, then a business person second. So it's been a journey.
And I don't know if you feel this way. For me, it's a little bit different because I have two kids. Riley's my stepdaughter; she's 18, and I'm mom squared because we've been together since she was 6 years old. And Evan is now 17, and he's a little bit more challenging, and it's been kind of a different journey. And I started my business I started my own business in 2011. I was out on my own by 2001. And I found, at least for me, I felt like I was better at being a business person than I was at being a mom. Like being a mom to Evan was very challenging. And so business was the one thing I was great at. Like speaking was the one thing that I did well. And so it was easier for me sometimes to gravitate toward the work.
Yeah.
Because it became it had become such a huge part of my identity. And I liked that version of me better than the mom version of me. Did you ever have that?
Oh, totally. I was so conflicted and I really had a split soul, right? But
Yeah.
to your point, I love the business. I love all things business. And then, oh, yeah, I got to be a dad. I have to actually have a conversation and be emotionally available, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Evan is at a therapeutic boarding school in Idaho, and he called me yesterday. And for the first time, it was so adorable. He goes, I have a presentation and I'm nervous. It's my first one. And I said, yeah, what advice did people give you? And he's like, well, I don't want to look at people naked. Old school at my
Oh my goodness.
picture naked. No, I was like, no, you're 17. Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, you all of your work was around this idea of brilliance, and I know you're now incorporating other areas. Tell us a little bit about your work around finding your brilliance and bringing that out, and now your spark, and really how you can ignite that in yourself. Talk about both of those different concepts and messages and how you help people do it.
Yeah, so my mentor said to me a number of years ago, he asked me how I was doing. And I said, if I had white skin, blonde hair, blue eyes, it would be very easy for me to succeed in America. And he said, you're stuck in your mind and your body thinking the pigmentation of your skin determines who you become. And I'm here to tell you that you weren't born to fit in, you were born to be brilliant. And Anne, when he said it, it just unlocked something in me. This is almost 20 years ago because no one had ever told me that I was born to be brilliant. So I started down this whole journey, researching, looking, what's this whole thing of being brilliant, brilliance? And I stumbled upon some of the work of Dr. Howard Gardner, professor of education at Harvard. And he and his team of researchers did an interesting study over a 20-year period. And what they discovered is children up until the age of 4 are operating at the genius level. Same group of children studied in their early 20s, and only 10% were still operating at the genius, or what I call the brilliance level. And in their late 20s, early 30s, only 2% we're still operating at the genius or brilliance level. So the question that I had, like you had, is where did this genius or brilliance go?
Right.
It didn't go anywhere, but it became buried by a society that says color within the line, sit down, give it back, you can't do this. And I said, wait a minute, organizations and businesses want men and women to show up and to release their brilliance. So I started down this whole path of really understanding, oh my goodness, it comes down to what is your talent, your gift, your it factor, that thing that makes you come alive. And when you do it, you're in flow. And when you're in flow, there is an alignment of head, heart, and hands. So it's not so much about what you're getting in the form of a paycheck, it's about what you're becoming as you release your brilliance. So that's been like the foundation of the work for the last 15 years or so, talking about this whole concept of brilliance.
What do you say to people who struggle to know what that is? In my new book, I quote Perry Trespasio. We spoke at a TED event together. And, in her first TED Talk, she said, show me a window washer and I'll bet you $1 million he's not passionate about clean glass, when she was talking about like finding your passion and your spark. And so how do people find that if they don't know what it is? Where do you even start on that journey to figure out what is it that ignites me, for people who've never really had time to think about it?
Sure. So in a world of algorithms, automation, artificial intelligence, the central question everyone has to ask themselves right now on the road to brilliance is, what problem have I been created to solve? Aristotle made a profound quote. He said, where the needs of the world intersect with your talent, your gift, or your ability, therein lies your vocation, or what I would call your universal assignment. So in answering that question, what problem have I been created to solve? What irks you? What keeps you up at night? What literally gets on your last good nerve? That's a sign that perhaps you're the person that's supposed to be the solution to that problem.
I know a lot of people are out there listening going, I'm supposed to fix my mother-in-law? No. No. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky to have a great mother-in-law. I love Nancy. But I know a lot of people, I've been talking about like finding this name for your negative self-critical voice. And I've had so many people go, can I name it my mother-in-law? And I'm like, sure, that's the problem I'm trying to fix.
Sure. Too funny.
So tell me about your work and your research, and what has been surprising for you, and what has been profound for you, and practicing it in your own life. What have you learned?
Yeah, so DL, who it stands for Debbie Lynn, she's an instructional designer. We used to work at Disney for years. She worked at Disney University. And we said we have interviewed thousands of top performers, leaders at all levels, over literally 17 years. And we said, what is the one thing that continues to come up after the interview, after the call? What do we discover? And we said, wait a minute. There is a man or woman that shows up every single day in an organization, and they have that spark. They have that little something extra. They have that Reese Witherspoon, Jennifer Lawrence, Matthew McConaughey, Bradley Cooper. They have just that it. It's in Kerry, Washington. You just see it. And they walk into a room and they just light it up. And it's from the inside out. And I said, oh my goodness, they have the spark. And I said, what would it be like for everyone to have that spark, that thing within them that money can't buy?
Right.
But when you connect with it, you know it.
I love it. And for you, what is that?
For me is I hug people with my words. That's my spark. I I upgraded my verbal software a long time ago, so I love everything to do with words. And I find a way to listen more and talk less. But when I say something, I want the words that I say to invite people into an environment where they feel hugged and valued by the words that come out of my mouth.
Well, you do it brilliantly. So you absolutely do that. I think that's such a great way to describe what you do. I love it. And Bruce, who I don't know how well you know,
Yeah.
and I love her. She said, "What is the most brilliant lesson in mind over moment, Anne?" So Anne is plugging my new book, and that it will be available October 6th. And Simon got to have a sneak peek and a sneak read. So
Great.
mind over moment, like the idea behind it is, and maybe you can relate to this, that we just get caught living the same day every day. We just are busy being busy, and many of us never get to stop long enough to go, what do I really want from my life?
Mhm.
What is it that's important to me? And if you want to create a life that's purposeful, you have to learn to pay attention in the moment and to develop some habits, some beliefs, some skills, the ability to really take back control over your own nervous system, over your own destiny. And for me, the biggest impact, the most brilliant lesson for me was you don't have to run from the uncomfortable stuff. Like right now, COVID has been uncomfortable for a variety of reasons for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And most people don't like to be uncomfortable. So when they are, they run to the cabinet and they graze, or they go to the bottle and they drink, or they do drugs, or they do something to try to like numb it and not feel it anymore as
Right.
I sip my cocktail, right? But and all of those in moderation, right? But I think that the gift for me has been learning that simply taking time to just sit in the discomfort
Yeah.
helps it go away faster and be less intense. Just learning how to bring yourself back to the moment, because I have a tendency to be an emotional runaway train, and I can get very frustrated very easily, very stressed very easily. So in my therapy, it was doing the work of going, all right, you don't have to fix that. You just have to be aware of how you're responding to it. And then
Yeah.
you can decide what to do going forward, but you don't have to be in a constant state of reaction. You get to choose what you want your life to look like, and so for me, that was the biggest lesson, is really taking back control. And I love what you said earlier about your mentor saying, it's you limiting yourself, not the color of your skin, not your education or your background. It's what you're saying to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's been the biggest lesson from it. What was something you took from it?
You know what I loved about your book when you talked about breaking reactivity? We like react all the time instead of just wait a minute, time out. That was one. The other thing that you did is you invited us to lean into the negativity, right? And to really see it through a fresh lens. And I love how you kind of debunked the whole, just think positive and the negative thought will go away. No,
No.
it won't. It's still kind of there,
Yeah.
and how you talked about ants, and just it was just so
Yeah.
refreshing. And in fact, okay, you'll love this. And it's so serendipitous that you would say this and ask me this question. So I'm reading your book and I have an app called Day One Journal. And I was so impacted by what you had wrote in your book that I wrote something in my journal from your book that was just growth for me. And here's what I wrote down. Experience dependent neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to create new neural pathways based on new experiences. The more you think and behave a certain way, the easier it is to think and behave that way. When you look for reasons to be grateful or look for the positive in people and situations, the very act of looking increases serotonin, dopamine, neurotransmitters that trigger positive emotions as well as reduce stress hormones. You feel better and you can respond rather than react. And I was like, oh my God, this is like so good. Like, it's from your book. And I was like, okay, I need to remind myself when I'm having a moment and I want to react.
Yeah.
I
But
will.
That was also huge for me, right? Because you can change your brain. People talk about happiness, right? And my brain, I was not born with the genetic gift of seeing the glass half full. It's not something that came naturally to me. And I think the best teachers are the ones who have to struggle through it to figure it out. But for me, resilience is about retraining your mind. And we right now, especially, like if you turn on the news, if you talk to anybody, we are bombarded with negativity and we marinate in it.
You just sucked it. You just, yeah.
And if we spent a tenth of the time marinating in the beautiful, good moments that are fleeting but are there, then we would retrain our brain to start searching and finding those things. We're just so quick to look at all the things that are wrong. And I was talking to my girlfriend, and she said, everyone I talk to is so negative. I'm tired. I'm stressed. I can't do it anymore. This is ridiculous. When is this going to end? And those are all like really normal thoughts, right?
Totally.
But you don't have to engage those. Like you can go, yep, those things are all very true. And I can choose to focus on what I have control over and to look for the good moments. So today I had a Zoom meeting with Dina on my team, and I had the Zoom window open, and I'm embarrassed to say, I was on the floor rolling around, snuggling with my dog, kissing his little nose, and I forgot that the Zoom camera was on. She's like, hello? And I'm like, those tiny little moments of dog breath that just
That's funny. That's funny. But I got to tell you, your book blessed me so, because I wrote something else down. You can change your brain if you spend more time magnifying what is good that's happening in your life and less time worrying about what you can't control and ruminating on the negative. And just over these last few months of COVID-19, economic uncertainty, and certainly racial injustice, it's like a cocktail for negativity, like all at once. It's the perfect storm. And I said, but wait a minute, let me zoom out, pun intended, and think about what's right instead of what's wrong. What can be done instead of what's not being done. And just in my little patch of where I am in Florida, how can I just start with my neighbor next door, and just being a good neighbor, and I am. But how do I become a better neighbor? So, yeah.
I've so enjoyed doing these Facebook things. I had a guest, Stephanie D'Alfonso, and she said something that I still have written in front of me on a sticky note on my monitor. And it's so simple. It's what's right now.
Wow, that's so good.
Like what's right now? Because right now I get to be in a place that has air conditioning, and I get to have my dogs and my husband and my kids and food on the table. And, there's so much that's right now. Yes. When you stop to just go look for that, you're reminded of how much we tend to focus on all the stuff that's not right now.
So true.
So Tracy asked, how do brilliance and resilience practices complement each other? So I can talk about resilience practices. Why don't you start with brilliance practices?
So brilliance really allows me to shift from going to a job to going to work. A job stands for just overboard. But when I find my brilliance, what I begin to understand is that a job is employment, work is deployment. And when I deploy my gift, my talent, my ability in what I love, I will never be unemployed because I love what I do. So it's about deployment, not employment.
And what are some skills or steps that you train or coach people to take to discover it, cultivate it, practice it, hold on to it?
Yeah, so 4 questions. First question is, where have I been? So sometimes people have to assess their skills, their ability, where they've worked, where they really soared, right? Question number 2, why am I here? Very important question. It's the age-old 1,000-year question people have been asking. Third question, what can I do? And the what can I do question allows you to laser focus instead of being a floor lamp of diffused energy to say, wait a minute, this is what I can do right now. And then the fourth question is, where am I going? And so start with those 4 questions to say, I want to move towards brilliance. And as you begin to answer those questions, then you're looking for the next step that you can take on the road to this continuum of brilliance.
I love that. And the way that ties to resilience, I think if you're not taking time to identify, I call it your lighthouse. So, when you swim in an ocean, it's choppy and there's storms and the waves will suck you under. And we're kind of in a torrential storm right now. Mm-hmm. But as a swimmer, you're taught to aim for something that is immovable, like a buoy or a dock or a lighthouse. And so for me, this idea of finding that purpose, that passion, that who are you, what do you want, where are you going, is really about what am I aiming toward that's bigger than me? Mm-hmm. And what am I looking forward to? And so it could be something as simple as I look forward to date night or pizza night or, bingo, whatever it is. But it's a larger thing. And, I'm 45. I forgot how old I am. I'm 45.
No.
Yeah, I'm 45. You're 27, so I'm
older.
So for me, it became pretty obvious, Evan's illness and my own depression led me down this path of going, all right, so I feel like my strength is, and what I love to do and what I've been called to do is to use my voice to bring awareness to some of these issues and to couch it in ways that are approachable and make sense and I'm authentic because I don't know any other way to be. But my lighthouse has really become, the big one is mental health advocacy. But Jay and I were talking last night because someone said, what does living your best life look like? And we thought, that's a question that most people don't stop to ask. And we said, all right now, what would our best life be? And one of my lighthouses, and I have pictures of it and it's on my vision board, is an RV, a travel trailer. Now to most people, this probably sounds like the dumbest idea ever. But for me, I love to sleep in my own bed. I don't like sleeping in hotels unless they're beyond Ritz-Carlton hotels. I'm all over, but the Holiday Inn Express down the road that I stay in whenever I'm doing training for teams, and I'm staying there. Not so much. And so I thought, what if we could have our own bed and our dogs and our own stuff, but we just got to drive to the different events and we got to see the country and experience it. And so we actually this weekend might go look at an RV or so. That's nice. One that has been fun. What are some of yours? What are you looking forward to?
You know what, for me, I'm really big right now in being philanthropic in all that I do. So I volunteer.
Okay, you just made me sound like an asshole. I want to give to other people and not travel around in a tin box.
No, I wasn't trying to say you're self-centered. I wasn't saying that at all. I wasn't saying it's all about you. No. I wasn't saying that this is more white privilege. I was not saying that at all. I was not saying that at all. It's that we're friends. We're friends, so we can talk like this.
I got warm in here. Oh,
wow. And you are my friend. You are my friend. I love you and your husband. I do.
All right, so talk to me about your philanthropy.
I'm gonna leave it at that. No, you know what? I'll just say this. I have really been troubled when I look in our country and food banks around the country are just overrun with people that have food insecurity. We are in the greatest country in the world. And how is that families may not know what they're going to eat? So our team has done a few things to get involved with World Central Kitchen, which is Chef Jose Andreas, to just donate and give. And even here in our local community, with a couple of the missions that have reached out to me, and this is the first time publicly I'm talking about it, but I've written a check because oh my goodness, that could be me. Like that could be me. And I just really feel at this age and stage, how do we help the least, the last, the lost? And that's just my thing. That's not to put pressure on anyone, to make anyone feel, that's just my thing. Because if this was my last interview ever tonight, and what would people remember?
Yeah.
And I hope that they would remember that I made it not about me, but about we. And I reached out and did something for the limited time that I was here on Earth. So that's just my thing. I think COVID has had me very reflective, and so yeah. But maybe I need to get an RV.
No, no, no. Well, it's funny you say that because the Central Texas Food Bank is we donated as well because we were watching the news and these lines to pick up a bag of food where people were waiting for hours and hours and hours to get a bag of fruit for their kids. And I was like, that's just not okay. And I think sometimes it takes something like this for us to see it. But yeah, we did that too, because normally the charity that my book proceeds go to and that I support is NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, specifically here in Central Texas. But that we really kind of stepped back and said, all right, how do we help people eat tonight? Because that's a pretty immediate need. So I'm grateful that how can people support you in doing that? Do you have like a website or?
Yeah, you know what? We haven't done anything formal. That's something that's the next step for us. Okay. But I would say find your food bank in your local city or town and donate there, and just do it because research says, Psychology Today, I was reading an article that when you give to help someone else, it actually benefits you health-wise. Like literally, there are so many health benefits when you go beyond yourself. And I was like, what? That is so amazing. And it wasn't much, but it just felt good to say, you know what? I'm going to be a part of someone eating tonight. Someone being able, if they have to shelter in a homeless shelter, they can do it and be fed. That's just for me. I'm like, wow.
I love that. I'm going to fill my RV with lots of non-perishable items.
Why not? Absolutely. Right? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I want to turn a little bit and talk about something, a couple of weeks ago, I talked with Risha Grant and I had Strother Gaines on talking about pride and equality, and Risha was talking about a lot of the racial injustice and what people can do to support that. What have you experienced, and how are you helping your kids experience this?
Yeah, so one of the shocking experiences, I've been pulled over many times, racially profiled, and after a while, when you're pulled over almost a half a dozen times by police officers, you just become numb to it, because when they run, your license, they see nothing is there, right? But probably the one that really got me is because my children come over every other weekend. Daniel came over one weekend. He says, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to go to the community pool. We have a community pool here in our subdivision." And I said, "Okay, great." I said, "Take a book with you when you go to the pool. Just something intuitively, just encouraged him to take a book that he could read at the pool." Well, about a half hour later, I get a call from the Orange County Sheriff's Office, which is our police area, and he said, "Do you live here in Windermere?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Is your son Daniel?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Somebody called the police on him because they didn't recognize him at the pool. He didn't do anything wrong, but just want to let you know, and I'm going to walk him back home." And I wish in the moment I could have told you how I felt, but I had to hold it together. So when the officer came, rang the doorbell with my son in tow, "Good afternoon, officer. How are you, officer?" My tone, respectful. "Thank you, officer, for walking my son back home." "You have a nice afternoon, officer." Same tone. Close the door. Daniel comes in, looks at me like, "What the heck? What, like really? Like, really?" And I had no words for him. So it has been difficult as a father to have the talk with my son and daughter that, hey, if you're ever pulled over by the police, what is our procedure? Our hands are at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, officer. Officer, my license is in my back pocket. I'm going to reach back and get my license so that I can show you. And officer, my registration insurance is in the glove compartment. I'm going to take this hand and reach over and get that for you. No father wants to have that freaking conversation with his son, but it's a conversation I've had to have since and before he started driving and now that he's driving, and with my daughter. And so at one time, a few weeks ago, when George Floyd was murdered and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, I was royally pissed off. I was so upset. And and then I said, okay, I have a choice. Do I stay bitter or do I get better? And that's when I had a lot of clients start reaching out to me to facilitate virtual conversations around how do we move forward. So a part of my work now is the way forward. We understand what's happened, and I have to take people back to history, back from 1787 at the United States Constitutional Convention, when it was decided that black humans were only three-fifths a human. Had to talk to people about 1865 during the American Civil War that freed slaves were promised 40 acres and a mule, never happened, right? Then to bring people up to obviously what happened in Tulsa almost 100 years ago with the Tulsa massacre, and bring people 100 years forward. So now what I'm saying, okay, once we understand that, what can we do right now? So I'm telling corporations, if you have a job opening, do you think of a diverse candidate, preferably a black or brown candidate? And here's the deal, and I don't speak for all black people because everyone that looks like you doesn't speak for you, but I have a perspective, and here's the perspective. Black people don't want to hand out, they want to hand up. So if they're good and they just happen to be black, that's a bonus. But just don't hire someone because they're black. No, hire them because they're good and they need somebody to open a door, make a call, invite them to have a seat at the table, right? And when I look at my 30-year journey, 6 different companies, 10 different jobs, almost 1,800 companies that I've spoken for in 49 countries since leaving Disney, and 99% of the people that I've dealt with don't look like me. But somebody opened a door. Somebody made a call. Somebody said, this is my friend. He needs an opportunity. And oh, he's black. Whatever. Is he good? Right? That's what needs to happen. That's the way forward. Everybody reaching across to say, let me pull you in. Let me introduce you.
Yeah, I think so. First of all, talk about privilege. I can't even imagine getting pulled over and having to worry about getting my license and registration and explaining what I'm doing like that. Evan had an in-home caregiver. We had him here at the house probably 25, 30 hours a week. His name was Michael from Tanzania. He was from Africa. And Michael was the most distinguished, well-dressed, well-spoken man. I mean, just a joy to be around. But he always told us, because he had 4 kids, 2 of them are boys. And he said, I always taught them you dress above everyone else so that you're treated the same as everyone else. And that always broke my heart, like that you would have to dress differently and carry yourself differently and do that. And I think diversity and inclusion programs for so long were more of course we have a diversity and inclusion program. We're a forward-thinking organization, right? We have employee resource groups. Yeah, we have gay people. Sure, we have Asians. We make groups for these people. I don't think that's really the point. Like, the point isn't to have a group of everybody that looks like you. The point is to teach people how to bring everybody together.
Yes.
Do you agree?
That's totally it. It's about having a diversity of thought around the table, and that's where the innovation is. And once you have that diversity of thought, Now you move to conscious inclusion to say, we may have someone from a different people group that has a different opinion, but we become better together. I hate to make it sound like a cliche, and I need you and you need me. Like we need each other in order to be better, right? That synergy, the sum is just not the parts. It's when we come together
Yeah.
and we share our viewpoint.
So what are you teaching leaders to do because I heard that this week, you've got to move from unconscious bias to conscious inclusion. And
Yes.
last week I had a really cool couple of guys, David Smith and Brad Johnson, who wrote Athena Rising, and they have a new book called Good Guys coming out. And they talk about how men can really stand up and be mentors and advocates for women in the workplace. And one of the things they said that I think is mimicking what you said, it's not enough to just include people, it's advocating for people,
Yes.
it's sponsoring people, it's putting your reputation on the line.
Yes.
Because this person deserves a chance. It's not just doing it silently, it's being vocal about the choices that you're making as a team. How are you coaching leaders to show up?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'm encouraging leaders to take a page out of the chairman and CEO of PwC, who has just done a remarkable job by saying they're going to dedicate 30 employees over the next 2 years to end racial justice. And they're going to be on PwC's dime. They're going to get involved with community organizations and look at how they can be a solution on ground all over the United States. The second thing, and you alluded to it, is now is the time to move from mentorship. Mentorship is great, but we need allyship. We need someone to become an ally inside the company who will say, Simon, I'm going to wear your brand t-shirt when I'm sitting in a meeting, and says, you know what? We need to have Ann on the team. We need to have Ann a part of that project. And we'll go out on a limb and say, here's what you're going to do. But then here's the third thing that I'm inviting organizations to really think about. So now is the time for a triple bottom line. Shareholders benefit, stakeholders benefit, but the community benefits. And every business has got to begin to say, if we are dealing with suppliers who supply to our company, have we thought about Black businesses who've never had a chance to bid on a project or to offer something up? What if we give them a shot? What if we create our own internal Shark Tank? Let them come. We invest and help them. That's how we're going to really level up, by having an ally who will come alongside and not close the door, but say, let's open the door. And they come from a spirit of abundance and not just scarcity.
That's so important because, if you've ever seen The Secret or The Law of Attraction, we think about what we think about, we bring about, right? Where you direct your mental energy. I believe now, like The Secret was all about material things. And so for me, it's not so much about, I covet that watch and now I'm going to attract the watch. For me, it's not so much about the thing. It's if you direct your energy towards something, you create through inertia, you create the ability to make it happen simply because you make unconscious decisions that you're not even aware of to get to that place.
Correct.
What can teams do, like from a team norm perspective, right? So you've got teams, and I was recently doing a training for a client, and we talked about Project Aristotle. Are you familiar with Project Aristotle? So in 2012, Google set out to figure out what makes a perfect team. And so they have all of these researchers and sociologists and data gatherers and, just organizational psychologists, neurologists. They hired a ton of people, and they already had a lot of these people, and they studied 180 teams. And they were at first flabbergasted because they couldn't find a pattern. They could not figure out, some teams had managers that were super direct and to the point, and other teams had managers that were super empathetic. They found some successful teams, everybody was an extrovert, and some had extroverts and introverts. Some teams ate lunch together, some didn't. Like, they looked at all of these different variables, and they could not for the life of them. And they looked at a half a century of data on teams and what works. And in the end, it came down to psychological safety, which I'm sure is no surprise to you, right? Which is like this ability to speak up and not be afraid that you'll be rejected or that somebody will use that in a way to hurt you. How do you help companies build that kind of culture? Because what Google found is it really boils down to team norms, the unspoken rules that everybody kind of just follows. Like you've got some teams who people just talk over each other, right? And you've got others who everybody gets a chance to speak. What do you find are the norms in the most successful teams as it pertains to brilliance and inclusion and all of the things we talk about?
I think the first thing that teams that provide psychological safety really do well is they create a sense of belonging. And a sense of belonging is this is a person who's a human being outside of this place of business. And when they're on our team, how do we also honor and celebrate them as a human? And we get to know them on a personal level, not just the function or the job that they've been hired to do. The second thing that I've seen that works really effective with teams is to ensure they have a buddy. They have someone who helps them understand the rules of engagement. I'll never forget. I was only going to stay at Disney for 90 days and then I was out of there. It took me 2 years to get hired at Disney, 10 interviews. I was only going to stay for 90 days because I couldn't figure out how to get things done. Here I am working with a company. There are 64,000 people working within 47 square miles. I was lost as a goose in a blizzard. And I got a call from one of the senior VPs who just said, hey, let's go to lunch. And he became my buddy to say, here is the political game. Here's how it's played. And what would have been just 3 months turned out to be 7 years. So give people a buddy, someone that they can talk to, confide in, to say, let me teach you how the game is played. And then probably the third thing is this ability to get feedback from people beyond the employee survey, beyond performance reviews, that allows them to say, you know what, here's how I'm doing, here's where I'm struggling. Can you help me find a better way? Because so much of how business is done is not in the employee handbook.
Right. Yeah. So what do you do? Like David was saying, he was speaking, David Smith last week was saying he was speaking at a conference with Sheryl Sandberg and or he was on a panel with her, I think. And one of the things she said is, you don't, anybody who comes up to me and says, Sheryl, can you be my mentor? It's like a big red flag. But yet we all know that we need, whatever you call that person, an ally or a mentor or, somebody who is advocating for you. How do you, I know how I found that person. I got lucky and stumbled into a man who became my mentor for a decade and taught me. Mm-hmm. For people who just don't have that person, how do you find that person?
Find the person that you want to emulate and identify what are their hot buttons, what problems are they solving in the organization, what is it that they're doing. They're on the radar screen somewhere. Send them a note, get involved, find a way to put yourself on a volunteer project that gives you exposure. Secondly, you literally have to create a surround sound campaign for your career to get to that person. So in other words, your name keeps coming up. They're like, who is this person? Because you do great work. The third thing is to think about what would it be like to go to your leader and say, what is it that I can take off your plate that you don't like to do? And you may find out that leader may become your mentor, your sponsor, your advocate, your ally, because you ask a different question. What is it you don't like doing that I can help you? That's where you separate yourself from the pack.
Yeah, I always so Mark Twain had that saying, if the first thing you do every day is eat a frog, nothing else is going to seem that bad for the rest of the day. Right. And then Brian Tracy wrote a book called Eat That Frog, which is like, what is the task that you just dread doing? And so what I coach people to say is like, help me, what is your frog? Like, what is the ugliest, nastiest frog on your desk? And how do I help you eat it? Because you become indispensable when you are a problem solver, not a problem maker.
Totally.
How does this work though? What's your experience? I know I work with a lot of global teams that were already virtual in many ways, but now it's everybody is, unless you're an essential worker or, you have to be present. A lot of people are working remotely now. Have you found it's harder to create those connections and relationships and to find that brilliance and that spark over a computer screen instead of around a table?
So some of the coaching that I've done with leaders to really connect during this next normal is to double down on really picking up the phone. I know it's old school, but say, hey, in lieu of just doing yet another Zoom, let's just pick up the phone and have a conversation. Secondly, having obviously a virtual cocktail time at the end of the week to celebrate what the team did right instead of what they did wrong. There you go. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? And then the third thing to really think about, and this is a little old school, old-fashioned handwritten note with a personal stamp that's mailed to someone during this COVID-19 time to say, Ann, I see you. I appreciate you. Thank you for your contribution this week. I can promise you that person is going to hold on to that note to say, what? My leader took the time, and it's the intent to take the time to write the note.
Yeah, I have a delicious moments board in my office, and I talked about it in the book, where it's like these little baby moments that I want to savor. Yeah. And so I've got like dozens of thank you notes from people. Like one of them was on a cocktail napkin that said, it was like during a session I did, and she just took one of the cocktail napkins at the hotel where the event was held and just said, you just kind of helped me shift the way I think about things, and you had a big impact on me. And you're right. It's something about someone taking the time to write a handwritten note is just.
And how did it make you feel?
Amazing. Amazing. Like glowing. Yeah, it's that thing. And I love what you said about, how am I helping others? Because there is science behind what you were saying. It's called a helper's high. When you help other people, it's the single biggest momentary increase in happiness of any activity ever tested. So even if it's just like picking up something someone dropped, or yesterday, I went to the store and there was someone trying to get groceries in their car, and I said, let me take your cart back for you so you don't have to do it. Like, it doesn't have to be huge. It's just these tiny little baby micro decisions that you get to make. I watched another woman, she dropped something, and a guy in front of me, was like passing her first, and he looked at it and kept walking.
Wow.
And I looked at it, picked it up, and handed it to her. She was like, thank you so much. And I'm like, it took no time. It took no energy. It took no effort. But it was just a nice thing to do. And it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. It makes you feel good.
You indeed are an awesome human.
Even if I get an RV. I'm going to just run around doing happy things for people in my RV. I'm going to go to websites and just pick up other people's stuff. Simon, I was going to say this, and then I heard it come in my mind, and I thought that my husband will think that's weird. I was going to say, you make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside, but then I realized that's not what I meant to say at all. But I do adore you. I think you're wonderful, and I know your kids are coming over, and I just can't tell you how much fun I have with you. And thank you for taking the time to chat with us. And I just think you're fantastic.
Thank you. And let me just say this. I so appreciate the difference that you're making in the world. I hope that your book is #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list. I hope that organizations globally will tap into your genius. And I am believing that this next year is going to be your best year ever, because the world needs your message, your voice, your spirit. Your family is blessed to have you as a mother, as an executive, as a leader, as a wife, as a person who we respect, because you're the real deal. There's no BS about you. What you see is what you get. So I celebrate all that you are and all that you are becoming, because you are all that and a bag of chips.
I adore you, my friend. And Tracy said, I love Simon's laugh. It's the best thing ever. Your laugh makes me laugh. The only one other person in my life can do that, and it's my Grammy. And she's 4'9", and she's like a little Greek Spitfire. And when she laughs, you cannot help but laugh. You're the only other human that does that for me.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, my friend.
I love it. Mwah. Have a wonderful weekend. Be well. And thanks for all the good stuff you're bringing to this world, Simon. We need more of you.
Thank you, my friend. Take care.
Bye.
All right, bye.